Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Recruiting and Career Podcast. We're actually filming this today, so for those people who want to see what I look like and then decide that they don't want to watch it anymore on video and rather listen to it because he's definitely got a face for radio, now's your chance. So we'll be uploading that onto YouTube at some point. Now, a job interview is a massive deal. I think they say after moving house and getting married, it's one of the most stressful things you can do. Now, I think the other two are a bit more expensive, but it is a big deal and very nerve-wracking, I think, for most people. And of course, when you're nervous, you're not always at your best. So we've got some tips today for both before the interview, at the interview, and then after the interview as to how you can get the best out of it. So we've broken it down into 3 sections. So first of all, preparing for the interview. Now, point number 1 is pretty basic, but not everyone thinks that way, is to research the company. The 3 key words of advice here are research, research, research. What do they say? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. But then people wonder, well, what should I actually research? Now, if you're going through a recruitment consultancy, hopefully they should give you a pack of information. We certainly do for all our candidates out on interview, but that still doesn't mean that's enough, really. I would, to start with, Google. Google's always a good source, and then check out the website to start with. Look at the company's product line, what industry are they in, look at the size of the company, how many locations do they work from, how long have they been in business, are they a public company, they're a private company, how many people work there. Then have a look on the social media feeds, see what they've been up to, either charitably or business deals, and get a look for the key people in the company. See if you can find out about the company's culture, mission, and their values. Have a look. Glassdoor is quite a good site actually, whereby people put on who work there and have worked there, what they think of the company. I mean, it's all anonymous, and you have to temper the fact that obviously some people who leave might have a negative slant to it, but you can get some interesting information from there. LinkedIn and social media, again, there's lots of information on there. And another good tip is try and find out who's interviewing you. Because if you can find that out, you can then do like a mini stalk exercise on LinkedIn and social media, and you might find out quite a bit about them. I've got a funny story on that actually. A couple of years ago, we were talking to someone about a potential new product we could use in the marketplace, and the woman said towards the end of the interview, we were just sort of like finishing up the meeting, so are you going to Hull on Saturday? And I looked at her and thought, that's pretty odd, but she was right. I was going to Hull because I'm a West Ham home and away season ticket holder, and and we were playing Hull that Saturday. But so I thought, oh, maybe she's going to start a conversation football wise about that. But then there was nothing else, so it just appeared rather stalkerish. So if you find that information, just be careful how you use that and make sure you've got the right context on it. So, I mean, this sort of information will then help you to think, right, well, do I want to work for this particular employer? So then you can tailor your skills to their needs, their values, what they're looking to achieve in the company. And a serious job applicant should be informed. So do your research. Okay, that's point 1.
Number 2 is prepare your answers. So what we're talking about here is preparing answers to generic standard interview questions, which most interviewers will go through. It's about getting you talking and finding out about you. The interviewer is not only wanting to find out if you're the right fit in terms of experience and skills, but they're also going to want to find out if you're the right behavioural and personality fit for the organisation. So they'll really tap into some questions to hear more about yourself. So what we're suggesting here is actually physically writing down some answers and really preparing them. you may not be asked all of these questions, but along these lines you will be asked questions, and it'll just put you in a really good position if you've prepared them and know how to present them in an interview scenario. So here are a couple of typical questions that you may be asked. One of the most popular ones would be, tell me about yourself. So while this is mostly related to your career in your CV in terms of what you can bring to the role, sometimes an example we have from another business in Leeds, who an IT sales company, when they're recruiting, they often hone in on sales candidates who have maybe sports experience. They want to see that competitiveness. So talking through maybe your position within a sports team, or maybe you've been a captain of a sports team at some stage, that's going to be putting you in a really good position in terms of the characteristics they look for behaviourally for a role of a salesperson. Why do you want to work for us? This is something where, leading back to Mark's research side of things, you want to know something relatable as to why you're choosing to interview there, why you're interested in working for the organisation. So find a connection, an interest, or something that's making you want to work for them, and then you can display that at the interview. What makes you a good fit for this job? Again, that leads back to your skills and what you can bring, how you can add value to the role. How would your colleagues describe you? So this is a chance to kind of showcase yourself, be positive, and how have you been integrated in a team environment before? Why did you leave your last job? Now, this is something that in terms of a reason for leaving on a CV or getting asked this question at interview, the key thing to do here is to not shine your previous employer in a negative light. It's not great to kind of badmouth anyone in an interview, but you never know who may know who, especially if you're working between industries in the same industry. You don't want to kind of badmouth a competitor, which may actually turn out to be a friend or someone that the interviewer knows quite well. Another really common question, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Just a quick, on that point, when it says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Don't say, in your seat, because that can make people stand back and think, whoa, stay clear of this one.
Yeah, you've got to be mindful of the fact who's interviewing you. While they want to see, some development potential within you, and someone who's driven and maybe career hungry, you don't want to step on anyone's toes who's interviewing you. So be really mindful about that. So in terms of any salary questions, you're not negotiating. A lot of them can be kind of challenging questions, but it's just about having a realistic view of your position in the market, your worth, without kind of overselling or underselling yourself. So that's point number 2. There are kind of lots of tips on YouTube for these areas, and also coming June there will be Walker Talk available on our YouTube channel, which will have lots of hints, tips and guides in a video format for you as well on this topic.
Now, Walker Talk will be very exciting. I think we're having a host of people throughout the company talking on different areas and different specialisms, and giving you some real advice on YouTube. So bored of what to watch on a Saturday evening, Line of Duty's finished, Game of Thrones finished, get yourself on Walker Talk.
Number 3 is prepare your questions. So while the interview itself is predominantly you being asked questions by the interviewer, you also need to show some interest, whether it's during the interview or after is kind of the most common point where you're offered the opportunity to ask some questions. So we want everyone to be kind of mindful of what kind of questions to maybe ask at this stage, and the questions to steer well away from are questions specifically about benefits packages or maybe holidays. That is something that can be discussed at a later stage. It may already be in the job spec, but it's not really showing a deep interest in the company, the role. So have a think about it, whether you've done some research beforehand and have some solid questions to ask, or if something has come about during the interview. Or if one of the questions you wanted to ask has already been answered, make a note of that at the end of the interview and say, I was actually going to ask about A and B, but they've already been covered. However, I have another question. You could maybe ask the interviewer about their role, their involvement in the organisation, how long they've been there, or maybe talk about the business in terms of the direction, where they're wanting to go, what's the business growth plan in the next couple of years, or is there new products coming to market? it's just about showing a bit more of an interest and showing that you're really engaged in the interview.
Yeah, I always find it a bit odd when people start saying what's the holiday entitlement, because it doesn't set the right message for me. If you're going for an interview and finding out what you're going to do in that role, and whether that role's right for you, to ask at that point how many holidays do I get is sort of going against the grain a bit for me. So I'd certainly stick well clear of that one.
Another good one actually is asking the interviewer if they think you're a good fit, or maybe what they look for in potential employees, potential candidates. Just again to show you're really engaged and you've taken on board everything that's been said throughout the interview process.
Yep. Point 4 then, in terms of your prep, is preparing to handle difficult questions. Now you will get some difficult questions and some awkward questions, and one of the main ones that people struggle with is what are your weaknesses? Now they're not after a personality trait here, because chances are if it's a personality trait, it's not something that a company will be able to change with their culture and environment. So, don't say I'm impatient, because that's not something they can change. And don't say like a strength in disguise, so like, oh, I work too hard, or I'm a perfectionist and I really put pressure on myself, because I don't know, it's not the type of thing people look for. So when you're doing this and when you're looking at your weaknesses, the first step is to brainstorm a list about yourself, sort of areas you think for improvement. Be brutal with yourself and think, right, well, these are areas I can improve on in the workplace. Step 2 is to highlight the weaknesses that appear in a professional setting. And 3, pick one current and one past one and develop a story around them. And that's a great way of using this question of what are your weaknesses, so that you can then go from, well, this has been my weakness, this is what I've done about it, and this is where I am now. So so you can say, twist it around, say, in this situation where I've been inundated with work, I have tended to react in a particular way. This may make me appear to be impatient, and as a result, I'm aware of this, and now I act in this manner, which has helped that situation. So you're doing a twist on it, really, and saying, I'm aware of weaknesses, this is how I deal with them in the workplace, and this is how it's improved. So positive spin. And that takes us nicely on to point 5.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So number 5 is take a positive mindset to interview. And this is kind of apparent, not just in an interview, but positive mental attitude. It's a big thing. It's a big kind of talking point, motivational point. And while it's normal to worry going into an interview, it's only natural. It's a nerve-wracking time. An interview is a two-way conversation between yourself and the interviewer. They're wanting to assess if you're the right person, and you're also wanting to assess if the company's the right place for you to make your next move. So thinking about it that way, try and relax so you can really show the real you. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be working there, you want to make sure that you're showcasing yourself as you, so that you're very natural and you can fit in naturally with the team there. So long before the big day, identify what you can bring to the company. The company is going to want to know in the interview how you can add value, how you can be an asset to the company. So think about your selling points, your strengths, and that confidence will come through in a positive way where you're able to display that in an interview. So think about the positive mental attitude. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Sell yourself without going overboard, in terms of nobody likes an overinflated ego, but there's a balance between showcasing your strengths and what you can add, without going into too much kind of overselling yourself. So the best kind of candidates have a genuine interest in the company, and they really show it by doing the research and finding positive things they can talk about the company. Maybe, for example, we've had recently, when we've recruited here, we've had great feedback from new employees or interviews that they've loved our website. They've found it really engaging and interactive. While looking at other websites, that was kind of their first impression, leading back to our First Impressions podcast. So that was a really positive start to an interview, talking through something like that that's relatable and you can have a conversation about. So positive mindset.
Okay, so now we're on to the big day, the interview day. Point 6, now is dress appropriately and arrive early. Now, we've covered this a lot of this type of stuff on our first podcast called the first impressions, and first impressions really do count. We did some interviews very recently, didn't we? And we found ourselves being impacted by our first impressions of individuals. So it really does count, and I think we found that took us really off track when we saw the individuals. So yeah, first impressions count. So you need to dress smartly and conservatively and appropriately. I mean, if it's a techie environment and they're all casually dressed, find out, ask the question, should I wear a suit? Should I come casual? Just so you know, it's important that you dress that way so that you feel good, and that helps with the whole positive mindset and the positive mind being. Arrive early as well. You never know what's going to happen on the day. So you need to plan your travel so you arrive early and to relax. I think we said before you should do dry runs of how you're going to get there, what time the buses, the trains, how long it takes in your car at that time of day. So you factor all that in. Have your mobile phone charged in case you need to ring your agency if there's an issue, or if it's direct, if you need to ring them, say, this has happened, I might be slightly late. But then when you get in, turn your phone off. There is nothing worse, and I've had this quite recently, of someone having their phone on the desk, having it on, and even replying to something while being interviewed. Needless to say, we didn't take that person any further. But I mean, how bad is that? Really, how bad is that? It's poor. Have you got anything to say on that, or I think you were saying about your train travel?
Just an example for if someone's doing the commute to an interview on public transport. I myself this morning was on the train, and it was running late, and there'd been 3 trains running late prior to this, so there were kind of 3 loads of people on the train when it was just meant to be 1. And it made me a little flustered starting the day, coming to work without having an interview ahead. But it just made me think, if I had been in a position, or if someone was going for an interview with that scenario where something starts off the day a bit negatively and throws you off track with your thought process and kind of that positivity and relaxed state, when something like that does happen, if you are going to be late, phone ahead if you can. But it's more about just taking a step back and relax, do some breathing, which kind of leads into the next point in terms of body language. Let your body language help, not hinder you during an interview. Now, this can be pre-interview, like I'm saying with the example of being in a flustered state, but also as well as dressing appropriately and arriving, you'll feel more, you'll feel stronger and more self-assured if you're in the waiting room, rather than sitting down and slumping. Maybe stand in a more confident manner. Like I said, deep breathing can help settle your nerves. Smiling links back to the positivity. Smile when you're greeting the interviewer or the person on reception. A smile kind of is infectious. You smile at someone, they will smile back, and it will also help relax you. Engage in small talk. You are there for an interview, but there's no reason why you can't kind of break the ice a little bit. With
the weather. It's always a good one. The weather.
Talks about
great
the weather.
One, the weather.
The weather's always a good one, or the traffic, or the train. So they're great way to break the ice and just find a bit of a common ground and relax you into the interview. Also, during the interview, make sure you sit upright. This is something we've covered off in the. I'm just making sure consciously now sitting upright instead of slumping. Hold your shoulders back. Put yourself in a position where it makes you feel more confident and look more confident to the interviewer. And also another good one, maintaining really good eye contact, not staring too much, but making sure you're connecting with the interviewer. Another thing is research has shown that having your hands visible during an interview implies more honesty, which is obviously a really good thing, a good trait to present in an interview. I think a lot of people, I know I for one talk with my hands quite a lot, and people tend to, if you're quite an expressive person, I think it's quite good,
that's quite good,
to do that. So body language is another important one to consider.
Okay, and the last point we have is for about when you're answering your questions, and that's remember, it is a conversation at the end of the day. It's not an interrogation. You know, try and enjoy yourself. Answer the questions as natural as you can. Pause when you need to take some time to think about things, like say about the breathing things. You know, these little things help. And if you make a mistake or something, just backtrack on it. You know, most interviewers are human. Most, not all, from our experience, but you know, they're not trying to trick you out. They're trying to discover, you know, if you've got the skills and the right personality for their role. So, you know, the worst case scenario, you come away and think, well, actually, it's not right for either party. And then when you get to the end of it, obviously, shake hands, thank them for the time. Okay, after the interview.
So immediately afterwards, obviously, like Mark said, thank them for the time. It's kind of a courtesy to do so, but obviously following on and thanking them and continuing that engagement can make you stand apart from maybe other candidates that might not have done that and may have just kind of left with saying goodbye. But it's about wanting the person that's interviewed you to walk away from that interview and really remember you, make you stand out, have that spark, and almost be excited. We've had that experience here where we really remember someone, they've shone through in an interview, and we've been really excited by how the interview panned out. So another thing to do is to kind of stay on the radar, maybe that afternoon if you've had the interview that morning, or the following morning if you've had it in the afternoon. Just send a thank you, follow-up email, thank you for your time, really enjoyed meeting with you. You know, look, not being pushy in terms of wanting feedback, but just again, leaving your mark so you stand out from other candidates, so people remember you and you're kind of in the forefront of their mind. So that's all the points really.
Okay, so quickly just to summarise them, right to the 8 points. First one is research the company.
Number 2 is prepare your answers in advance.
Number 3 is prepare your questions.
Number 4 is prepare to handle difficult questions.
Number 5 is positivity.
Number 6 is dress appropriately and arrive early.
Number 7 is let your body language help and not hinder you.
And number 8 is when you are answering their questions.
I've got one last point actually to make, which I meant to make at the beginning, but I forgot. When we started these podcasts, we had some feedback saying, you seem to be talking really fast. Now, this is a true story. What happened is, spoke to that person again who listens to quite a few podcasts, and they said, you know what I said to you about you guys talking really fast? I said, yeah. I said, well, we tried to slow down when we did it afterwards. They said, well, actually, I realised I was listening to your podcast at 1.5 times normal speed. What do you do? So hopefully it's not too fast, but please let us know. But first of all, check to see that you've got it on the right speed. Okay, so that's it for now. So we'll catch up again with you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.